Hey Chaotic Crew, it's Brian back with another Bloomburrow Precon review and upgrade. Don't forget, we're giving away one of each of these pre-constructed decks for each of the videos that we release. This is the second out of 4, and we're doing the Squirreled Away Precon this time. So black-green squirrels. Make sure to comment in the comment section below, what is your favorite Golgari commander? For me, it has to be Chatterfang, for sure. And he gets some love in this deck as it came out. But let me know in the comments below, what is your favorite Golgari commander? 2 weeks from now on the Twitch channel for Chaotic Commander, that's twitch.tv/chaoticcommandermtg, we're going to be revealing the winner that's going to be getting this free Squirreled Away Precon anywhere in the US. So make sure to leave that comment below. Let's jump into the review of the deck right now. It's Hazel of the Root Bloom as the commander. Pretty much she's a 4-mana, 3/5 squirrel. You can tap and pay 2 life and tap X untapped tokens to add X mana in any combination of colors. So this is obviously a token deck. We're making a lot of mana. And then her second ability is, at the beginning of our end step, we create a token that's a copy of target token. And if it's a squirrel, we get 2 tokens instead. So making lots of tokens, making lots of mana, that's the whole point of this deck. Now the Precon really steers into more of an aristocrat strategy, which is actually fantastic in the black-green color scheme, especially when you're going with tokens. And I just have a few ideas of what to streamline the deck, make it a bit better. Now, to reiterate, I am going to be cutting 15 cards later and adding 15 more back in the deck. So make sure to stay tuned for that. But the creatures here, we start with Gilded Goose, a fantastic mana dork, makes a food token. You can tap and sack a food to add a mana of any color, and then later you can create food tokens with it. So Gilded Goose, just really good, I think, and an underrated mana dork. Haywire Might, great to be removing some pesky artifacts or enchantments. Unfortunately, has to be non-creatures, but still good. Nested Shambler, a 1-drop, can make a bunch of squirrel tokens if you have the right synergy for it. I don't think this deck really does, so we probably will be taking Nested Shambler out. We've got Ravenous Squirrel, which whenever you sack an artifact or creature, you get a 1/1 counter on it, and then you can pay 3 to sack an artifact or creature, gain life, and draw a card. We are making lots of mana, so could be useful there in the late game, but I'm honestly not the biggest fan of this card. Prosperous Innkeeper, a lot better for this deck. It can ramp right out into our commander on turn 3 if we get this out turn 2, because it makes a treasure token when it enters, and it also gains life, which is perfect for our commander because we're going to be paying a lot of life to use our commander's ability. So Prosperous Innkeeper, really good there. Squirrel Sovereign buffs all of our squirrels, which is pretty great there, including our commander and some other important ones. Zulaport Cutthroat, like I said, more of that aristocrat style card. Whenever it or another creature we control dies, each opponent loses a life, we gain a life. Academy Manufactor is alright in this deck. We don't have too many food generators, so we actually might want to take it out, because it really only benefits us if we're creating clues, foods, or treasures, right? Chatterfang is, like I said, fantastic. My favorite commander in the, almost said Gruul. I am Gruul pilled. No, in the Golgari colors, just a fantastic creature, right? Forest Walk, whenever you create 1 or more tokens, you create that many tokens plus that many 1/1 squirrels, and then you can sacrifice squirrels to make target creature get +X/-X until end of turn, so that can be really neat there. Honored Dray Leader, a buff squirrel. It's going to enter with +1/+1 counters for each squirrel and or food you control, and whenever you get more +1/+1 counters on it, and then it has trample. So if we can make a token copy of this one, that's when it's going to start to be scary for our opponents. Morbid Opportunist, some good card draw when our squirrels die. Nadir's Nightblade, again, more of that aristocrat style with draining each opponent when a token we control leaves the battlefield. Playcrafter is a 1-time sack outlet and gets rid of some of our opponent's stuff as well. Scurry of Squirrels, a new card with double Myriad, and whenever it deals combat damage, you get a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Tireless Provisioner is a great card. Landfall, make a food or a treasure. Now this is, an argument for keeping Academy Manufactor in. We're going to be making a lot of treasures and food with this. most of the time treasures, but there's some food synergies in here, so we'll see. Woe Strider, when it enters the battlefield, you make a goat, and you can sack a creature to scry one, and that has escape as well. So Woe Strider, a great sacrifice outlet for sure. Arasta of the Endless Web, just a 3/5 with reach, and when an opponent casts an instant or sorcery, we make a spider. So this is a good way to generate a lot of spiders. Typically, in my experience, Arasta doesn't get a lot of hate. There's a lot more scary cards on the board, so Arasta can last for a minute. Chittering Witch, when it enters, you make essentially 3 1/1 rats, and then you can sacrifice a creature to give another creature -2/-2 until end of turn. Hazel's Brewmaster, some good graveyard hate. When it enters or attacks, you exile a target card and create a food. And then foods you control have all activated abilities of all creature cards exiled with Hazel's Brewmaster. So that can be really neat too if your opponents have some, shenanigans with activated abilities. Even some mana dorks, you could exile with Hazel's Brewmaster and get like a free mana dork. So that's kind of cool too. Insatiable Frugivore, a new card. It's a rat, and when it enters, you make a food. Then you may exile 3 cards from your graveyard and repeat the process. And then you can sacrifice foods to give creatures +X/+0 and menace. It's not a bad card. I just don't think it really goes into what this deck wants to do. I don't really want to be exiling a ton of cards from our graveyard, and it is a good pump effect, but for 4 mana and then 4 more mana, I'd say it's probably not worth it for me. Poison Tip Archer, another aristocrat card. Whenever our creatures die, each opponent loses a life. Skyfisher Spider, when it enters, you can sacrifice a creature if you do destroy an online permanent. So this is just a good removal. Now, it isn't a squirrel or do anything with tokens. I'm just counting this essentially as a sorcery in this instant that can block later down the line. And then you could potentially gain life later, which is nice. But yeah, it's just a removal in the deck. Toski is a squirrel that makes it so that when our creatures deal combat damage, we draw a card. Deep Forest Hermit creates a bunch of squirrels. Moonstone Eulogist, a new card. Whenever a creature in opponent controls dies, you make a blood token. Then whenever you sacrifice an artifact, put a 1/1 counter on the Eulogist and gain a life. Again, this doesn't really synergize too well with our deck. Sure, it makes a blood token, but we have to wait for our opponents' creatures to die, and it doesn't really give us creature tokens, which is what this deck wants the most. Ogre Slumlord makes 3 rats and gives rats we control of Death Touch. If we were a more dedicated rat deck, that would make sense, but I don't know about that. The Odd Acorn Gang is the alternate commander of the deck. Minish, Trample, Reach. Squirrels you control have tap. Target squirrel gets +2/+2 and gains Trample until end of turn. Activate only as a sorcery. And then whenever one or more squirrels you control deal combat damage to a player, you draw a card. That's actually a really good ability. I think this Old Acorn Gang and Chatterfang work really well together. You swing in with Chatterfang, who has Forest Walk, right? And so you have 5 untapped squirrel tokens. You can tap them all to give Chatterfang +10/+10 on Trample. So definitely can make any of even your commander, can make any of your squirrels scary. Beledros Witherbloom, a fantastic reprint in the deck. I don't know what it's doing in here, but it does make tokens, and you can pay 10 life and untap your land. So if you need even more mana, there you go. And lastly, for the creatures, Enraze Forerunners, which in a token deck is really good. It's sort of a budget. Crater Hoof Behemoth, Vigilance, Trample, Haste, 7/7 when it enters. Each other creature you control gets +2/+2 in Vigilance and Trample until end of turn, so can really make your board hit for a lot harder. It comes with Garruk, Cursed Huntsman as well. Planeswalker that comes in with 5 loyalty for 6 mana. 0 to create 2 black Green Wolf tokens. When they die, you put a loyalty counter on each Garruk Planeswalker you control, which is nice. -3 to destroy a creature, draw a card, and then -6. You get an emblem with creatures you control, get +3/+3 and have Trample. This is just a good top-end card. I mean, if you have more mana than you know what to do with, Garruk is pretty good. It's also a removal on a Planeswalker, which is really nice, and it can definitely be helpful in getting your board, recovering your board after a board wipe as well. Spells, we've got Cash Grab, mill 4 cards, put a permanent among them into your hand. If you control a squirrel or return a squirrel to your hand, you create a food token, so that can be neat. Chatterstorm is create a 1/1 green squirrel with Storm. Deadly Dispute is you sack a creature, draw 2 cards, create a treasure. Plumb the Forbidden, 2 mana to draw a card and lose a life, but you can sacrifice one or more creatures and you copy it for each creature sacrificed this way. So could be a way to draw a bunch of cards if you really need it. Tear Asunder is pretty solid removal and flexible. I love it a lot. Maelstrom Pulse is sorcery speed, but gets any non-land permanent. Putrefy is instant speed. That's gets an artifact or a creature. Saw in Half, one of the best cards of this deck, and fantastic reprint. You destroy a creature, make 2 token copies of it, or its controller makes 2 token copies of it, excuse me. So you might be targeting your own stuff. You could be targeting one of your opponent's things as well, but you are giving them 2 token copies with half the creature's power and toughness. But you're pretty much doing this on yourself to make squirrel tokens of some of your good squirrels, and then your commander can hopefully give you even more at the end of the turn. Brewcast Apprenticeship is pretty solid. You choose 3. You can choose the same mode more than once, get 2 counters on a creature, create a token that's a copy of target token you control. Target player creates a squirrel, target opponent sacrifices a non-token artifact. So 4 mana at baseline to get 3 squirrels is not bad. You can also, if you have a token copy of a squirrel, you can make more of that. Target opponent sacrifices a non-token artifact. You can get rid of some pesky artifacts that way. Second Harvest is always good. For each token, you put a token on the battlefield that's a copy of that permanent. And then Shamanic Revelation, just fantastic card draw. You're typically not going to be gaining a ton of life with this card, maybe 4, maybe 8, right, at most. You're really just playing this for the card draw. We also have Swarmyard Massacre, which that's not showing right now, but it's a 5 mana board wipe. Essentially, you make 2 squirrels, and then for each squirrel, rat, spider, snake, I think, is the last one you have. It's whatever's on this swarm yard. Rat, spider, squirrel, insect, not snake. For each one of those you have, your opponents, all other creatures get, -1/-1. So it's kind of a one-sided board wipe in this deck, and pretty neat. Windgrace's Judgment destroys a permanent on each player's board, which is great. Casualties of War is also getting rid of a lot of things, and typically this isn't the best, most efficient use of mana, but a lot of times with this deck I feel like we're going to have more mana than we know what to do with, so we're going to keep that in. Decree of Pain is an expensive board wipe, destroys all creatures, and then you draw a card for each creature destroyed this way. You could do this if you're behind on the board, right, and say you have a few creatures, but your 1/1s aren't holding up to the rest of the board, so Decree of Pain can help, reset everything and give you some cards, but it's just so expensive. Skull Clamp is a great artifact to help draw cards. Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, Golgari Signet. I don't like how these green precons have artifacts as your main ramp option, but that's another video for another time. I love Oblivion, good card draw, and you can make a 10/10 colorless Eldrazi in the late game and potentially copy that with your commander, so that's nice. Sword of the Squeak is a fun new card. Gives a creature +1/+1 for each creature you control with base power toughness 1. Whenever a hamster, mouse, rat, or squirrel enters, you may attach Sword of the Squeak to it, so that's kind of neat there. Talisman of Resilience, another ramp artifact. Chitter Spitter gives you squirrel tokens and can buff your squirrels, which is nice. Maskwood Nexus, also a fun card in this deck, given all your cards, all creature types. I don't know if we're typically going to use it. I mean, we can make shapeshifters and then get 2 of them at the end step with our commander, but I don't know how worth it that's going to be. Gorman's Town is a neat spell. You make food, you turn your artifacts into foods, and then whenever you gain life on level 2, for the first time each turn, you make a raccoon. And then for level 3, whenever you gain life for the first time, you get a 1/1 counter. I don't think this really synergizes super well with the deck other than turning your artifacts into food, so it's not really ideal. I'll probably take it out. Wolf Willow Haven is a 2 mana enchantment that ramps you, but you can also sacrifice it late game for a wolf. Only during your turn, though. I don't think this is a very strong card. I'm taking this one out, too. Bastion of Remembrance, great aristocrat card. You get a 1/1 token, and then whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent loses a life, and you gain life. Beastmaster Ascension can close out games. If you're attacking with a bunch of creatures, you get quest counters, and then when you have 7 or more, all your creatures get +5/+5 as long as this is on the battlefield. So it's pretty neat. Squirrel Nest is a great way to generate tokens as well. Binding the Old Gods, great removal, gets you some ramp, and can make your creatures have Death Touch, which isn't super relevant, but you're mainly playing this for the first 2 modes, but is a great card. Moldavine Reclamation, is a good card. Sometimes I feel like it's too slow though, but in this deck could really work out well. You're gaining life and you're drawing card for each creature you control dying, so that's definitely good. And then we have 38 lands. We have some solid ones here. Best, one is the Swarmyard reprint, right, where you can tap to regenerate an insect, rat, spider, or squirrel. So this can be used to protect your commander, or your Chatterfang, or your Odd Acorn Gang, or whoever. But yeah, that's pretty much the deck. Let's go into the 15 cards I took out and the 15 cards I'm going to put in for this Precon. So for cards to take out, Insatiable Fugitive is gotta go. Like I said, it doesn't really fit our theme. Sure, it makes foods, and you can sack it to buff your board, but it doesn't. It's too slow for us, and it doesn't really give us creature tokens like we want. Moonstone Eulogist, same way, doesn't really fit our exact game plan that we're going for here, so we're gonna take him out too. Nested Shambler. We don't have really any way to buff him, right? There's a couple of +1/+1 counter cards in this deck, but it's not nearly consistent enough to play this and be like, yeah, I feel comfortable by paying 1 mana for a 1/1 squirrel when this dies. Like, I have to wait for this to die. So sure, it's a blocker, but then, yeah, whatever. Ogre Slumlord, I'm never been a fan of this card, right? It makes 3 rats, which is nice, and then rats have Death Touch. Sure, that's good. It gives you 3 good blockers, but I don't know, it just never really worked out for me. That I didn't think it's worth the 5 mana. There's better cards than this. Plague Crafter I took out as well. It's just a one-time sack, and you're getting rid of your opponent's worst stuff, so not really ideal. I took out Ravenous Squirrel as well. Sure, late game you can sacrifice stuff to give it, more card draw and gaining life, but I think, this is really more of a win more card in my opinion. It doesn't really do you any good, even though it is a good 1-drop, but yeah, it's not amazing. Scurry of Squirrels I thought was fun. Since we're taking out some of the cards that really care about the 1/1 counters, I figured we'd take this one out too. You are making squirrel tokens, which is kind of what this deck wants to do, but they get exiled at the end of combat, so your commander can't even utilize them, and all this is doing is giving you 1/1 counters, so it doesn't really help out. And all the squirrels it makes already come in tapped, so you can't abuse them with Acorn Gang or with your commander, so it's just not worth it. Like I said before, Decree of Pain, also an expensive board wipe, a bit too much mana. You're only really going to have this much mana if you have your commander on the battlefield, and at that point, do you even want to kill your commander? I don't know. It could be good in some situations, but it's not consistent enough for me to be like, yeah, this is good. Cash Grab, just another card to take out. It does make a food, but it's essentially 2 mana to draw one, and we just could have better draw spells in this deck. Maskwood Nexus, I don't think there's enough cards in this deck to really take ownership of the fact of giving everything changeling. If we had more cards that made non-squirrel tokens, then this would make more sense to me, but we don't. So I'm taking this one out. And then I already explained Gorman's Talent earlier, just doesn't do what this deck wants to do. I explained Willow Haven as well, just not a great card. Barrenmoor, Tranquil Thicket, they're not bad cards, especially if you have lots of cards in hand, but I feel like this deck, because we're generating so much mana, making so much tokens, we're going to be running out of gas, and we're going to need to be drawing more cards. Now, technically, you could discard them to draw cards, but then you're getting rid of the lands. I don't know. And then I took out Oran Reef too, because it doesn't really do a whole lot except for buff the squirrels that enter this turn. I don't think it's worth it, and there's better options out there. But the 15 cards I'm going to be putting in, I'm going to start off with Dray Keeper, a really solid card. Enters the battlefield, you get 2 squirrels, which is already what we want. And then pay 4 mana to squirrels. Give squirrels we have +1/+0 and menace until end of turn. So if we just have a bunch of mana we need to dump into something, we can do it to Dray Keeper, buff our squirrels, make them harder to block, and go from there. Gala Greeters is a really good card. When creatures are in the battlefield, you're going to get a tap treasure token, you can give it counters, and you can gain 2 life. Really the last 2 of making a treasure and gaining 2 life are the 2 most important things you want to be doing with this deck as you get creatures. Griswold the Dreadsower is one of my favorite cards to put in here as well. 3/3 Trampler. At the beginning of your end step, each player creates a 1/1 green plant creature token. And then whenever a creature token dies, you put a 1/1 counter on Griswold. So if you've got some sacrifice synergies going on, this guy can grow big really quickly, and it's it's kind of fun to play with him. Jaheira, also a great card for ramping. Kind of does similar what our commander does, is you tap the tokens to add green mana, and so you can get a lot of mana with Jaheira, and having that backup ability of our commander, definitely nice to have. Lord Skitter, Sewer King, a pretty good graveyard hate card. Whenever another rat enters, you exile a card from a graveyard, and then at the beginning of combat, you make a 1/1 rat. So giving this card out earlier than your commander is pretty nice, because then, you know, the next turn you can make a copy of the rats. But yeah, it's good graveyard hate, and it's making tokens. It's doing what we want to do. Marionette Apprentice, Fabricate 1. You can have it enter with a 1/1 counter, or have it enter with a 1/1 servo. You're almost always going to choose the servo here, because this is a tokens deck, and whenever another creature artifact you control is put into a graveyard, each opponent loses a life. So just another aristocrat card to put in. I thought, hey, why not add another one? Next, we have Sarn the Necromancer. I think this is a bit of a spicy ad. It is 5 mana for 4/4 menace. Whenever it attacks, you exile a creature card from your graveyard. You create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of it, except it's a 3/3 black Wraith with menace. And then at the beginning of the end step, you exile it unless Sarn is your ring bearer. We don't have any ways for the ring to tempt us in this deck, but this is a good way to be able to make copies of some of your creatures in your graveyard. Like, so not just making copies of squirrels with your commander, making copies of you know, Gala Greeters, or making copies of Drake Keepers. That could be really good. And this is sort of a way to help get some stuff out of our graveyard that has some good enter the battlefield triggers. It does turn them from squirrels to wraiths, unfortunately, but still a pretty good synergy with our commander. Springheart Nantuko, though, probably going to be one of the best cards we're adding here. It's a bestow enchantment creature. Pretty much you're always going to bestow it, and that has landfall. When a land enters the battlefield under our control, we may pay 1 of the green if it's attached to a creature, and if we do, create a token that's a copy of that creature, which is, you know, anytime we can do this, we're going to be doing this, because we want token copies of our actual creatures that we can copy with our commander. So the more we do that, the better that is. And if we didn't create a token this way, we get a 1/1 green insect creature token. So that is, you know, either way we're getting a token, but if we can make copies of our squirrels, that's even better for our commander. I am also adding a couple squirrels to the deck. Thornvault Forager is a good mana dork to help ramp our commander out. You can also forage if you have some cards in your graveyard to get 2 mana. You can also pay 4 and tap it, search your library for a squirrel, put it in your hand, and then shuffle. So this is a good way to get some of our really high power squirrels like Chatterfang or the Acorn Gang into our hand. And I just think it's a good card all around in this deck. Then we have Valley Rotcaller. It's a 1/3 menace. When it attacks, each opponent loses X life, and you gain X life, where X is the number of other squirrels, bats, lizards, and rats you control. Don't have really many bats or lizards, but we do have squirrels and rats. So this is going to make it so that each opponent's starting to lose a lot of life, we're starting to gain a lot of life. If we make token copies of Valley Rotcaller, our opponents are going to be in trouble. And then Warren Soul Trader, just a fantastic sacrifice outlet. We're paying 1 life, sacking a creature, getting a treasure. So if we have Chatterfang in the battlefield, that's actually sort of a pseudo-infinite. As long as we're paying life, we can actually, you know, every time we sack a creature, we'll get a treasure and then also a squirrel, and then just resack the squirrel and get as many treasures as we want. So that's kind of neat as well. Pact of the Serpent to help us draw some cards. We will draw cards and lose X life, where X is the number of creatures we control of the chosen type. Typically, we're going to go with squirrels. And speaking of, we're making more squirrels with Verdant Command. And this is kind of a spicy card too, because it can also counter a loyalty ability of a planeswalker, which is pretty nice. It can create 2 tapped squirrels, it can exile a card from a graveyard, and it can have us gain life too. So this is pretty versatile in this deck. I think it's a pretty good card. Black Market Connections, also an all-star. It gives us card draw, gives us squirrels, and potentially ramp as well. So really probably you know, a must-have in a deck if you're really caring about getting these squirrel tokens. And then Fountain Port, one of the new lands, it's going to be pretty good. We can sacrifice tokens to draw cards. We can, you know, make tokens. We can create treasure tokens as well. So really versatile land here. I think will definitely go in the deck. Well, that's the 15 cards I'm going to be putting in and the 15 I'm taking out. I hope you enjoyed it, because this deck is actually pretty crazy. And if you want to win the Precon of this deck, make sure you don't forget to comment in the comments below what your favorite Golgari commander is in Magic. And 2 weeks from now, we're going to be revealing the winner on the Twitch channel, twitch.tv/chaotic commander MTG. and make sure to check in there for the winner to be revealed. We're doing a giveaway like this for each of these videos, so if you haven't checked it out yet, make sure to check out the Peace Offering Precon. That is, of course, the Bant Group Hug Precon as well. Enter for a chance to do that. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next 2 videos that are going to be coming out soon as well. Well, I hope you guys had a good time here and enjoyed the video. I will see you next time. Bye.